You're listening to the Caramel Apples Podcast, a podcast that dials up thoughtful, heartwarming nostalgia of all things great and retro in the golden era of pop culture and beyond. With your hosts, Kennedy Rizzo and Cooper Lee.
Are you ready for our discussion today, Kennedy?
I sure am. Are you?
I'm truly ready for this week's discussion.
All right.
Yes. And hello and welcome to all of you, our Orchard Archivers. And thanks for making the choice to join us.
Mhm.
This week, we have a special sweet treat for you, and that's revisiting the most beloved educational kids show and character, Slim Goodbody.
Yay!
So, Slim Goodbody was a fictional character on a most beloved educational program for young viewers that introduced the nuanced way to teach children about anatomy and the working of the human body. I so remember Slim Goodbody.
I do too.
This show really captured our imaginations as kids, as well as provided us vital education on the important makeup and various aspects of the human body. But Slim Goodbody wasn't always instantly a kids show.
Oh.
Yeah, there's a very noble and interesting backstory on how Slim Goodbody got his start.
Well, let's get into it, Coop.
Okay.
Slim Goodbody, also known as the superhero of health, was a fictional character created in 1975 and was performed by the charismatic John Burstein. Do you remember him, Cooper?
I sure do. I can see him in my mind's eye right now.
Yeah.
I remember that he was a really limber, lanky character who would sing and dance and within skits to entertain us children at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So, teaching us about the anatomy of the human body, so on and so on. And his uniform, or rather costume, if you will, was a peach flesh colored unitard that mapped out the various tissues, organs, and organ systems in the appropriate various locations and sizes.
I do remember that vividly, too.
Mhm.
Slim Goodbody was the business. His positive, high energy, and upbeat musical nature, as he helped young ones to become familiar with the human body, that was sheer genius.
Mhm.
I also remember he had dark curly hair as well, aka the natural.
Oh my goodness. You are absolutely nuts, Kennard.
Slim Goodbody had some curls.
Oh my okay. Okay. Just a quick note on the infamous unitard. Fun fact. Each of those, every detailed costume were, get this, cost $4,000.
What?
Yeah, so that was big money back then.
Yeah, it was.
But obviously well worth it because it was part of the show, but still that's kind of expensive.
Yeah, that's some impressive coin right there for a costume.
Yes.
Now, this fact is a bit hazy for me personally, but I'm honestly trying to figure out exactly which show did we first become acquainted with Slim Goodbody.
Mm.
So, was he starring in his own standalone, or was he a guest star on another show first?
Let me see. Wasn't it on like Captain Kangaroo? I know he was definitely on that one. Pretty sure about
Maybe it was. You're right. He was on Captain Kangaroo. But, I do still believe he had his own show, too.
that. Mm-hmm.
Well, it's a good thing that we're taking the time to dive into the history and backstory of Slim Goodbody.
Get some of our facts right. Huh?
Yeah, yes, definitely. I believe digging into our memories and combining that with some of the valuable research we embarked on will have the makings of a most entertaining show this week in the orchard.
I agree, Kennard. I'm really looking forward to this.
Well, me too.
Yes. But before we get into the character of whom we remember, that of Slim Goodbody, let's briefly see what all transpired back then that inspired Mr. Bernstein to come up with such a fascinating, beloved character we've come to know and love.
I'm ready. Sounds good.
Okay.
So let's start on some interesting facts on Slim Goodbody's creator, Mr. Burstein himself. John Burstein was born on December 25th, 1949, in Mineola, New York. Grew up in Lawrence, Nassau County, New York.
Mm,
So while working at what was called the Floating Hospital in New York City, this is actually where he got his start writing skits and songs to help entertain the children staying there. About, as we stated, showing them the workings of anatomy and the workings of the human body.
genius.
Yes, it is. Pure genius.
Yeah. It was shortly after Mr. Burstein started doing that he actually added his ever famous organ painted bodysuit to his performances therein, dubbing his alter ego Slim Goodbody.
Okay. Okay.
That's just, isn't that just cool?
It really is. I think that, like you said, that is genius. Good word.
I always enjoyed learning of how certain beginnings of the memorable memories that we have of notable things came about.
Yes,
So many of these things had such an impact on us.
that it did. Well, we learned that Slim Goodbody got to be quite refreshing and exciting for all the many recipients that benefited from his genuine efforts to not only entertain, but also aiding in important education for the kids on such important matters such as the human body.
And soon he took Slim Goodbody out of the confines of the hospital walls and introduced him to the world.
All right.
Yeah, here I am. He steadily garnered a larger audience little by little, mainly making personal appearances and guest spots on various popular shows at the time, like The Today Show and Good Morning America.
Oh,
Shows still popular and going strong even today.
oh, totally. And just the mere mention of those two powerhouse morning shows, it's not hard to believe that his taking and introducing Slim Goodbody to the world, that venture would no doubt have far-reaching effects.
Yeah, and he just brought his A game. He brought that in, bringing his entertainment to children. You know, he brought it to life for them.
He did. He did.
And he was amazingly animated with his skits,
Hmm.
all the while focusing on the importance of exercise, personal hygiene, and nutrition.
I do remember his animated way. That was always entertaining with him.
Oh, absolutely.
But Cooper, I believe both you and I got to become familiar with Slim Goodbody when he appeared 2 times per week on the most beloved children's television series, Captain Kangaroo. It's all back now. That is where we saw him.
Yeah. All
And
right.
I think that aired on CBS.
Mm,
So he did this for 5 years between 1976 through 1981.
that's a decent run.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, so okay, yeah, Captain Kangaroo. I remember that show well. That was always a fun time watching that.
It most certainly was. But during that time, a most special thing happened.
Mm.
In that Slim Goodbody eventually received his own television series called Inside Story.
Ah.
So it aired on PBS.
Yes, yes, which stood for the Public Broadcasting Service.
Hmm.
That was like our personal kids station back then, wasn't it?
It really was. And you can see it in your mind's eye, like the P
Hmm.
for PBS. It had like a sharp angled nose.
Oh, it totally did.
Yeah, and it had that really weird educational sounding song like a bumper.
Isn't that crazy how that's in the recesses of your mind?
Oh, yeah, totally. Like you said, it's there too.
Yes.
Oh, wow. So, no doubt we enjoyed watching Inside Story on PBS as well.
That's right. Much like his appearances on the two popular morning shows we mentioned earlier, his performance as Slim Goodbody on Inside Story mainly consisted of his ever famous educational skits. But here's something I found very interesting, which further highlighted just how much his show became a success.
Ooh, do tell.
Okay, fun fact. So, Slim Goodbody used to make frequent guest appearances on Captain Kangaroo,
Uh huh.
but after Slim Goodbody got his own show, it was then that Captain Kangaroo would make special appearances on Slim Goodbody's show. Isn't that cool?
Yes, it is.
Talk about a 180.
So, Inside Story soon became PBS's second highest rated program.
No doubt, key guest appearances help out greatly in that endeavor.
Yes, yes, it did. And this led to John Bernstein's acquiring other notable appearances on other stations, such as Nickelodeon.
Mm.
But that wasn't all, was it, Coop?
No, it sure was not. For it's also noted that he was recognized for his fine work and performances as Slim Goodbody from the American Osteopathic Association in 1984 1985.
Hmm.
As we briefly look inside a bit more closely at his work, Slim Goodbody began making educational shorts on important topics, such as one important one addressing the fear of visiting the hospital.
That's an important one.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Mhm.
Um, if you think about it, how very scary it would be for a child having to potentially go into the hospital for something.
Yes, and scary, not just for the child, but definitely for the parents as well.
Oh, totally. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, no doubt Slim Goodbody played a key role in quelling and comforting those very real fears and facing something as serious and ominous as going into and visiting the hospital.
Oh, but sadly, when you think of children and their parents having to face such scenarios, um, it's sadly a thing now more so so to speak. But there was obviously a need even back then for this when we were kids.
Yeah. So John Burstein had that covered and sort of made it personal. So, fun fact, in one of these shorts, John Burstein, aka Slim Goodbody, actually featured his son Devin, featuring a child learning about hospitals as he attempts to overcome his fears of an upcoming operation with the help of good old Slim. Like what you hear so far? Make sure you never miss a show by clicking the subscribe button now. This podcast is made possible by listeners like you. Thank you for your support. Now, back to the show.
Starting in 1982, Slim Goodbody also appeared in books, as well as a series of educational shorts, which were produced 3 years later in 1985. Those shorts were titled Well, Well, Well with Slim Goodbody, which were specifically targeted the demographic of elementary school children K through fourth grade.
So, although we remember Slim Goodbody the most during his career performing his earlier skits and shows, the main focus was that of the human anatomy and its various functions thereof.
Hmm.
But remember, John Burstein's lovable character, Slim Goodbody, was created to be a help to kids' education in other ways too.
Oh,
Fun fact, Slim Goodbody was also very instrumental in addressing personal safety, self esteem, bullying, that's a hot one,
Yeah.
childhood obesity, literacy, and environmentalism.
Oh, nice.
Hmm.
We can see that each of those topics are so important and are of a sensitive nature anyway,
Hmm.
but so key and pivotal when it comes to the fundamentals of any kind of foundation learning,
Yeah.
um, which Slim Goodbody did for many a kid back in recent years.
Hmm.
So it's of no wonder why he's so cherished.
Yeah, you nailed it, I think. Um, you had briefly mentioned there, Kennard, a bit ago about him having his hand at penning a number of small, informative children's books starring Slim Goodbody.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So, a few of those titles to share were The Mind Wonderful You, Slim Goodbody, The Inside Story, The Astounding Nervous System, How Does My Brain Work, and Can We Get Along? Dealing with Differences, which is, a more recent writing that came out in 2009.
Okay, wow.
Hmm.
John Burstein really had a sincere interest in children, their education, and he had a most special way of dialing up that positive energy for us children as he sang and performed each time we tune in.
Hmm.
That's what I appreciate and remember most about the programming back in the day. It just had that feel that, we were tuned in momentarily to something that was really going to teach us, something that we could learn.
Yes.
We were already going to school and learning at school, right? That's true, but
Hmm.
it seemed like our education wouldn't stop after school hours.
Yeah.
Because we'd get home and there would be a plethora of educational specific programs just waiting to both educate as well as entertain us frequently that
Hmm.
made learning fun, memorable, and interactive.
It did. It really did.
Mm-hmm.
Slim Goodbody being a key player in our fond retro memories.
Yes, he was.
And as you said, that educational feel, quote unquote, really came alive so much of the time as we watched kid specific shows then.
Mm-hmm.
Not only educational shows like Slim Goodbody, as we're happily focusing on this week in our Orchard Trek, uh, but it was baked into all types of shows that we can remember back then.
Yeah.
Even cartoons, after school specials, PSAs, and such.
Oh, yeah.
We were always learning some way or another back then when we were kids.
Yeah, I mean that was kind of a mainstay with the programming back then. It was just, I don't know, it's very very intriguing.
Hmm. Yeah.
And we loved every minute of it. Hence us discussing it briefly this week.
Yeah.
That education was wholesome and genuine, and the education was real.
Yes.
Coop, we learned things, valuable things to place in our memory treasure stores to help us to make better decisions in life, like in being able to pull from the common sense collected during these times, in order to blossom into functional adults eventually.
We've arrived, right?
That's the hope. We're staying positive.
Jury's still out.
It really is. But wonderful memories from watching shows like Slim Goodbody was like a major contributor to that.
Oh, much agreed, Kennedy. There are still a good amount of kid specific shows in current times,
Mhm.
and we've heard of certain ones and cartoons that are pretty popular in current pop culture. But it would be interesting to find out what parents currently in a position to choosing and screening what their little or young ones watch and tune into these days,
Mhm.
what they're actually calling entertainment
Uh-huh.
as well as education.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so many are having to do or even choosing to do just that, currently being involved in homeschooling, and virtual learning and stuff.
Right.
And many current situations, parents are taking the reins on their child's education more so now than ever, since we're still dealing with this ongoing pandemic.
Oh, that's so true, Cooper. And it would be an interesting perspective to have to look at the entertainment one's children's needed, from not only a parental angle, but
Hmm.
now, like you mentioned, parents are playing the added role of teachers too.
Yeah,
So they're educators and parents all wrapped in one.
that's a lot. That's a lot.
Yeah, they wipe the sweat off their brow going, whoo. And we do too. Hats off to you, dedicated parents and grandparents out there. I don't know, mucho mad respect.
Yes, I agree.
But I wonder if this newer curve of homeschooling and virtual learning would that have been easier if circumstances had to switch back when we were kids? Um,
Mm.
with all of the many educational programs we had back in the 70s and 80s.
Yeah, that's an interesting slant, to think
Hmm.
about it that way.
Oh, yeah.
Because there's pros and cons with everything. So, although the kid specific programming would no doubt be key for both parents and their children concerning the educational process.
Yeah, moms and dads everywhere would be a resounding thanks, Mr. Slim Goodbody. Thanks. Because like what did he cover? Sensitive
Mm.
topics like the human anatomy. So parents would have been like more grateful.
Yes, exactly. But on the flip side, homeschooling, the way it's done now is no doubt way easier with having internet and accompanying tech advances. Not
Hmm.
even not that stuff wasn't even heard of back when we were coming up.
It sure wasn't.
So both eras have its perks of refreshment and ease concerning education.
Yes, and times are so different. Very eye-opening indeed.
Hmm.
So back to Slim Goodbody. The million-dollar question is he still around?
Yeah.
What's John Burstein up to these days?
Well, he's still entertaining children the world over with his lovable character Slim Goodbody.
Oh, that's good to hear.
Yes, which is absolutely amazing because, fun fact, John Burstein, as Slim Goodbody, has been championing children's health and related topics for, get this, over 40 years. How's that for
Wow.
longevity? Yeah, right?
That is some mad time there.
Yes, and patience. He's dealing with kids.
That's a good man.
Yes, yes. His demographic doesn't change. They're still always small. He's always dealing with the young people. We grew up, but he's still dealing with the little ones.
Boy, hats off, Mr. Goodbody. Well, when you got a winning, most beloved formula, the proof of that is undeniable.
His productions are seen and cherished currently by tons of children on the Discovery Education Channel.
Huh,
Yeah, his live performances are seen as he tours theaters around the country, sharing his talents with thousands of kids each year.
that's amazing.
Yeah, fun fact, this current live show is called Bodyology. Yeah, play on words there. Um, which again helps kids learn fascinating facts and functions of the human anatomy in an educational way. It's amazing he still has the drive and energy to accomplish this awesome feat with gusto.
That's the true miracle there. That's a good thing.
Yes, it is. It's like, give us some of that energy, please.
Boy.
And we mentioned earlier that he wrote small, informative children's books.
Hmm.
Well, he's currently penned 50 or so these days.
Wow.
Yeah. John Burstein is truly dedicated to his craft, and we are so glad to have those cherished memories of his fine works over the years.
And the many awards and accolades he's received over the years is a strong testimony of that fact.
Yeah.
So, just to name a couple before we knock off our fascinating discussion today, um, he's received the Parents' Choice Award,
Ah, That answers an earlier thought about what parents think of his educational contribution for their children.
Yes, it does. There's also the Corporation for Public Broadcasting,
Mhm.
the, the President's Council on Physical Fitness and Sports, and lastly, a familiar nod to the WHO or the World Health Organization.
You know, I really did enjoy going back and revisiting Slim Goodbody and our orchard trek this week.
Oh, me too, Coop.
Yeah, the many fascinating memories and, the warm backstory about John Burstein and his love of kids and their education on body systems. And he took a potentially deeper subject and created a perfect balance in making it fun as well as interactive. Slim Goodbody is forever etched into our retro memories that we fondly cherish.
And that's what a good education does. We learn something valuable in such a way that we never forget.
Mhm.
Slim Goodbody had that lively, interactive interest in how kids learned about the fundamentals of the human anatomy and its various functions. Who better to do this than Mr. John Burstein, aka Slim Goodbody? His genuine love and interest in children and their education has gone down in history, making him one of our favorite retro greats.
Known as the superhero of health, we say a resounding thank you, Slim Goodbody, for all the wonderful performances and memories.
Thank you. And that's it for this week's episode. But the fun doesn't have to stop here. Join us again next time when we'll be back with more captivating retro entries. Subscribe to the Caramel Apples podcast, and if you have any suggestions, requests, or feedback, send us a message and tell us how we're doing. We love hearing from you. Thanks so much for listening, and see you next time.